Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Alrighty, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. We begin Geeky Gentlemen Holiday Month, the month in which we discuss holiday movies. That's the new standard going forward, is we'll just do movies and maybe a special end of month topic, if we can think of one, because we kind of ran through all the good ones. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is...
A geek for fun.
He's back!
I'm back, baby.
He's back and he's ready to talk about movies.
Hell yeah, of course. Never better. Never been better. Feel free to ignore the episodes that were posted in my absence. In the backlog, in the Geeky Gentleman playlist, just skip those, a filler.
It's a shame, honestly, because I feel like Ian and I had a lot of fun just talking to each other for like an hour and a half last episode. Now fucking Alfie has to ruin it.
Yeah, he's gonna sit here and talk about like his fucking power scaling debates and his fucking stupid bullshit girlfriend and shit. It's gonna be fucking garbage.
I'm so fucking tired of DBZ.
When we fucking in the fucking episode talking about fucking Mr. Smith Goes to Washington at the end, I'm like, all right, so DBZ fans.
You guys didn't even exist yet. This was the 1940s, goddammit. Let me have this.
Steve's here too, by the way, since he forgot to introduce himself.
I didn't forget.
Anyway.
I was cut off.
Well, goddamn. All right, fine. Anyway, Alfie picked our movie review for tonight. And Alfie, what are we reviewing, sir?
Today we are reviewing the 2005 Shane Black comedy thriller crime film Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Man, I fucking love this movie. Yeah, I fucking love this movie. This movie's awesome.
This movie's so goddamn good. I love it so much. Anyway.
Cool. Yeah, that was a review, everyone.
I was kind of wondering where you guys were going with that, but you just do an abject phrase. Okay, I'll join it. Yeah, this is my first time watching this, and I really enjoyed this movie as well. I thought this movie rocked. I didn't know what to expect going into it, but like the idea again of Robert Downey Jr. pre-Iron Man was always interesting to me, considering like how much that dude is just like influenced pop culture afterwards, like that, and the kind of titanic surge of his career. Val Kilmer being in this as well, in that kind of weird period after Batman Forever and his other stuff is always interesting as well. Like that dude seems like his face changes in every movie, and his weight changes. Like everything about that dude is in constant flux for some reason, so it's weird. And obviously the only Shane Black film I'd watched previous to this was Iron Man 3. So him and Robert Downey Jr. being a combo was something that, the moment this film started and was kept going, I could tell it was a similar kind of style, but then it just kept going and bringing on the twists and the jokes, and I just found myself having a really good time with it. There's some things in it that I think don't necessarily work overall, which we can get into, but like by and large, I thought this was a great time and really, really smartly written. I haven't had time to check the credits on this, but you two might know more than me. This was directed by Shane Black. Was a screenplay by him as well?
Yes, Shane Black started in Hollywood as a spec writer, so he wrote Lethal Weapon, Monster Squad, Lethal Weapon 2, Last Boy Scout, Last Action Hero. There's something else here and there that he wrote. But this was the first movie he'd done in like 10 years. He'd had the script done for a while, And since they didn't have anyone who was producing it, he went ahead and directed it, and it was his first directorial movie. And then after this, he's only written and directed everything.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that this was his first outing as a director, because he seemed like he's such an old Hollywood name at this point, you know, going all the way back to Lethal Weapon. He was in Predator. So I thought he'd just kind of been around the block for a while, but I didn't realize this, you know, seems kind of late to be his first directed movie, and it's really well done. I'm kind of surprised this is the first film he's directed, in all honesty, just from like a technical standpoint and
He
stuff.
is very much old Hollywood. I mean, the cool thing about Shane Black is that he came in with Lethal Weapon, but he did a lot of work before that, where like he was writing a lot of stuff on spec. He was submitting to TV shows. He was submitting full movie screenplays. He knew a lot of people in the industry, and if you look back at his career, even in the early days, his stuff was like littered with old movie references and breaking down genres and tropes and stuff, something that he kind of does like wholeheartedly here with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. But like you look at Last Action Hero, and Last Action Hero is basically Shane Black deconstructing the genre he helped found with the buddy cop movies with Lethal Weapon. But he is one of those guys that's like, you can look at any one of his scripts and there's like a million influences there, and it gets to the point where it's almost hard to watch the movies for themselves in his early years, because they're just so jam-packed with like, look, this is really cool because it's from that movie from the 1940s, and this is from that movie from the 1980s, and like he's just that kind of writer. But Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and everything moving forward is when he like really actually found a style where he had a little bit more of his own like vocabulary and his own little aesthetic choices and stuff. Prior to this, all of his movies were still doing the thing where they were all set during Christmas. But like the whole sort of like witty banter, white guy, black guy partnership, two cops hanging out set during Christmas, all that stuff is there, but it's all kind of just ethereally there. It doesn't matter that Lethal Weapon is set during Christmas. It doesn't matter that the kind of dialogue, what he calls like the broken knight character archetype, like none of that stuff really matters in Lethal Weapon or Lethal Weapon 2 or Monster Squad or any of that shit. But when you get to Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, that's when he starts like really breaking down his influences and finding out who he wants to be. Because Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is all about, you look at the old genre of detective novels and you try and examine those things from a more comedic lens, and you really try to play up what are the dysfunctions of these characters, and if they really tried to do these things that are described in the novels, how would it go out? And then you get to something like The Nice Guys, which is almost a spiritual sequel to Kiss Kiss Bang Bang in a lot of ways, and that's a movie that's entirely on the idea of, let's have one person play it straight and one person play it realistic. So you have Russell Crowe in that movie, who is just fucking Philip Marlowe, and you have Ryan Gosling, who's like a more real-world equivalent, and they meet somewhere in the middle where he's using all of the stuff that he's developed in tropes over the course of like 20 years in the elements of the story. But I think part of why Kiss Kiss Bang Bang works and why it feels so fresh in this conversation is this is like the first movie where it really feels like Shane Black has something to say that isn't just Joss Whedon style talking over each other, jokes in every scene, a couple of hallmark set pieces you see in everything.
Yeah, for me, I've always really liked this movie just because of its sense of comedy. The kind of like ever-evolving levels of trouble is something that I find really, really fun in movies. The other movie that came out right around the same time as this and does a very similar thing is Big Nothing, and I really like that sense of like evolving chaos and destruction and just things going wrong for the protagonists left and right. That's really, really like a fun way to do a movie where things just keep getting worse, and I really like how it plays here. You know, it's like it seems so simple and everything seems to be going fine, and then just the second that car goes over the cliff and the body comes out, things just go to hell in this movie, and they never quite get better until the very, very end when he does the fucking 50 Lord of the Rings endings.
That's the thing that stuck out to me as well, is that constant sense of how many times can you make the audience say, "Oh, they're fucked"? And that's not necessarily an easy thing to do. The first time, it's pretty easy to do. But past that, to keep topping that first time while still making that first time fun, I think is something that it certainly escalates by the time we get the lake scene. But I think you're there the minute you get to the flashback and his partner dies and he runs into the audition room, and then just the sheer lunacy of it, and like does the performance and the whole face of everyone else. Everyone just plays that scene so perfectly. We just like, this is just so ridiculous. But you're laughing at it because it's just like, what the fuck is happening? And then from that point, it just keeps going and going and going. You're like, oh, the stereotypical like, hey man, take your hands off her, to getting the shit beaten out of service. But also like, not so bad that it would be like, oh my god, he suffered for it. It's like, no, he just kind of got beat up at a party, kind of lamely, and the other guy wasn't actually like. It's just like one of those like very middling things, and just again and again and again. It's just that constant sense of, oh no, but this is actually this, and oh, this is actually, it's just more and more ridiculous. That the humor comes from it without making the characters feel themselves ridiculous. I mean, they kind of inherently are, but I think how they're played is very acting, very at least Robert Downey Jr.'s character. He's reacting very much like just a guy in this incredibly fucked up situation, and there's moments of very like kind of like real emotion in it, like inside of the comedy of these ridiculous events where, like, spoilers obviously, but like he'll like he has to kill people, and then they really linger on those moments of just like, this isn't an action film, but that's where he can just walk that off. He's like, well, fuck, I just killed a person, how do I live with myself? Like, and going from that, I think is really interesting to balance and to keep of it. So I think that's the thing that stuck out to me, is the writing for this is so smart.
Yeah, the way the comedy and the drama just the drama, comedy, and the like tension of the film just shift together so well. I think the scene for me that like perfectly gets it is, you have like the intense drama and like the character invested relationship thing of Robert Downey Jr.'s character talking to the female love interest in the hotel room when she's like trying to convince him to take her case and take the case and you know, figure out what happened to her sister. And then he's like, all right, fine, I'll take the case. So like, you're really emotionally invested in that like dynamic between the two of them at that point. And then he goes to the bathroom and you see the dead body, and then you're like, oh no, like you get that intense like thrill, you get that intense level of suspense, and then he fucking starts pissing on the body. It's just the funniest fucking thing is like, yeah, you're midstream, you can't stop. And it's just shocking. And it just gets so fucking funny when he's sitting there describing it to Val Kilmer.
The pissing scene is the one that like absolutely killed me, because I was watching it with Erin, and we watched it just hard to her, and it's just like, there's no cool way to explain that. Like, at that point, you are just fucked. Like, there's no way on earth you can explain piss on the body. Like, you almost would prefer, like, semen. Like, because, like, you go to jail, it's like, oh, we found the body, it was covered in piss. You don't want to be that, dude. You want to be just the rapist. This king baby boys is the worst one to be. So like that one was really fucking good. There's just no way out of that situation the moment piss of any kind is involved on a corpse.
Oh my god. Yeah, that thing just fucking hits so goddamn well. It's just so perfect. And then, like, yeah, he's just calling Val Kilmer and he's trying to explain the situation. And just, it's like, he wants to try to explain himself and he wants, like, an answer to it, like, what is a pertinent question once you deal with the reality of pissing on a corpse. And Val Kilmer's just hung up on the fucking execution. The fucking way that Val Kilmer and Robert Downey Jr. bounce off of each other in this film is just so perfect. I honestly wish they put Val Kilmer instead of Guy Pearce into Iron Man 3, because it would have been so fun to get that dynamic back.
Oh god, that would have been great.
Oh man. Yeah, it's just like there's just, you know, the fucking like somber talk on the roof of, you know, oh, well, you've just been brought out here for show. It's just to get Colin Farrell to take a couple million off of his negotiations. Listen, I know it sucks. You can take a swing at me if you want. He actually fucking hits him in the face. And then they're mad at each other. It's just a really fun dynamic. Oh. It's easily my favorite bromance on film.
Really that far?
I mean, it's just so good. It's such a good dynamic. Like, this is... It's very unique, I think. Like, I don't know how to describe it, because Val Kilmer is such a fucking bully to Robert Downey Jr., but, like, he's just... you can tell there's just, like, some part of him that cares about him. I don't know. It's a really good dynamic on screen. I hesitate to think of anything that hits on a similar wavelength.
It's definitely really good.
It's a very fresh take.
Yeah, and I think what is exciting about it as well is like it's something that's immediately built on a power imbalance, and it's something that's immediately built on lies and like a complete misunderstanding. But it's also one like the actor thing, like with Val Kilmer's perspective. We're really not quite sure like how much of this story he understood from like the friendship and stuff. Of like there's what's about his character and like what he does and stuff is a lot of that is left like behind the scenes, and you don't necessarily get a good idea of what his entire background is. You just get like hints and stuff that again he says he's not a very good person and stuff like that. But because of that, you get to start out with a mentor almost kind of role. And then quickly transitions to, like you said, to just a bully, to just we are both fucked in this situation. I need to take care of you. To something that is like I'll take a bullet for you, and I think that is a very unnatural development, but it's one that is natural because those are the type of friendships that actually do kind of happen just by circumstance, and weird shit like that happening over the course of a period of time does bond people, and obviously they're very quick and funny together, where it doesn't feel fake. There's no moment of like the you were really my best friend. They don't need to have that. It's just natural, and I do think that is a really strong showing.
It's such a unique dynamic that feels like there's, you know, again, Shane Black with like the idea of a bunch of the buddy cop things, and like, you know, so after Lethal Weapon you get so many buddy cop black guy white guy movies that it just like distills down, and even if it wasn't really like a trope beforehand, it almost becomes like a trope overnight. And then so to do this, it's like, okay, criminal and gay guy buddy cop film, let's go. It's just such a unique take that like you can't really replicate it because the circumstances are too specific, you know. So it just there's that is the fact that it just feels so fresh and unique, and then the way the actors play off each other, the way the dialogue is just written. It's, again, like you can definitely feel that noir influence because this just has such incredibly sharp dialogue to the point where like they make fun of the sharp dialogue pretty early on in the film, like when he's asking him about taking this case for the initial like detective lessons outing. And he's like, oh yeah, you know, I came over to her house and she's got nothing on but the radio, and she sits down on my lap and tells me that she really needs my help. Robert Downey Jr.'s like, seriously? No. She had me over the phone. She paid with a credit card. It's just like a really, it's got that like talky dialogue kind of thing. Nothing on but the radio. It's got that like gangster talkiness to it. But then like legitimately later on in the film, they keep doing like gangster talky kind of dynamics that are really fun. And it's just, I don't know, I love shit like that a lot. Very witty dialogue.
I think that's one of those cases as well, when you're doing something that is very much leaning into genre like this. Like, you've got the tropiest of tropes. You've got Hollywood, you've got actors, you've got illicit relations, you've got sex, you've got the girl who all along was the thing, you've got murders, you've got crooked cops, you've got all these kind of things. Like, it's trope central. It's doing that to be a genre and not a slave to it, because it's not trying to be dated. There's a lot of this film that, especially like the soundtrack and stuff, that is very much 2005, but for the time it is trying to be a modern version of those, with like the Joss Whedon influence, all those kind of things. Like, what does that look like? But it's poking fun at it, but it's not laughing at it. It's saying, no, this is kind of silly, but it's also kind of fucking awesome, so let's just have fun with it. We know this is maybe a touch out of step reality. Mid-2000s audience who can't take anything seriously, so just listen to this and hold our hand and you'll have a good time. And I think that's a very good way of being able to do genre in a time that this movie doesn't appreciate that kind of thing, but still honor it and still like play by the rule book and not make it a parody, which I think as well is very impressive, because it's so easy to fall into that. It's so easy to be self-conscious about the genre you're doing, and not doing it in a way where you can just let it breathe and just acknowledge it. So there's a little bit of that in this. Again, there is still Robert Downey Jr. literally talking to the audience and saying, hey, this and this, but it's never done to take you out of the film. It's always done to kind of recenter you on the character, and I think that's a good example as well of, by making the narrator the character such a fourth wall breaky way from so early on, you don't necessarily feel like you're an onlooker with this omniscient part. Like if it was a different actor, right? If it was like that movie trailer voice guy guiding you through it, or you only found out who it was at the very end. The fact that we open with that and we stick through that for the entire film, I think is a really good, strong way of how to do narration like that. To give an example of something that does that a little bit in the same time period, is like the first Spider-Man movie. Is you open that with Tobey Maguire narrating it, and then at the very end, you have him narrate it again. He's not there narrating the entire fucking film, and so it just kind of feels weird. Like, it just feels like tacked on, but this doing it makes it really feel like part of the experience, which I think is really strong.
That's interesting, because I think the narration drops off pretty hard at one point in the film. For, like, a real... Like, there's a lot of narration going on, and it's mostly just bits, right? But I think, like, after the villain of the movie is introduced, they stop narrating for a good chunk of time. I think they do maybe one or two more, with, is her name... what's her fucking name? Melody? No. Fuck. The female lead, I can't remember the character name. It's some with an M, I think.
Harmony?
Harmony, there we go. See, I was close. I had Melody in the head. Fucking with Harmony, you know, like, you get some backstory stuff with her in narration, but like for a good chunk of the movie it just stops, and I think that's because it knows it has you by that point, and so it knows it doesn't need to like keep holding your hand with this stuff. I guess I'm not entirely certain how true that is, but like I just feel like the narration takes a pretty hard dive after the early parts of the film, after like that first 20 minutes to half hour. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
This is the problem.
Steve, take us somewhere.
Steve and Ian like a movie, folks. They're just like, yeah, that was good.
No, it's
Anyway.
it's one of those things where I like this movie a lot. I liked it a lot more before he made more movies, is my problem. Where, like, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang on its own terms is a fantastic film, but every time I watch it now, I'm like, oh, thank God he made The Nice Guys afterwards, because The Nice Guys is this, but so much better. But so I don't want to just compare the two all day, which is like, because, like, yeah, Val Kilmer and Robert Downey Jr. and this are great. You know who are better? Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling. It's just one of those things. But part of what I like about Shane Black's scripts is that Shane Black's the kind of writer that is, like, really procedural and really methodical. So he did an interview with The Guardian back around the time this movie came out, where he, like, literally just bullet pointed, like, 10 things of, like, how he writes a movie. And he goes through, like, his tropes and his choice of actions and how he does highs and lows and all of that stuff, and just kind of breaks down for you how a movie should be written from his perspective. And he uses the example of, you set up a movie about a haunted house, a guy enters haunted house, guy decides to investigate haunted house. These are all things that you can kind of draw from just the premise of a movie before the dude ever sets foot in the house. But in a Shane Black movie, dude finds a haunted house, realizes it's haunted, and then runs in the opposite direction for 10 miles. And so, like, that's the thing he tries to do, is that he wants the movie to go in tropey directions, but he wants to have a reversal with each of those tropes. And so the circumstances to get the character to where the trope is expecting you to go, and what someone's natural reactions to are always going to be at odds, and it creates this good tension and this good comedy. The dude's just a master of setup and payoff in that way. And so, like, my favorite scene in the whole movie is when they're interrogating the dude, and Robert Downey Jr. decides to play Russian roulette and just fucking kills him. It's the funniest thing of all time, because by that point in the movie, you're like, I think you're like a little over half, if not 2/3 through the movie, and you've gotten to this point where, like, the pulpy tropisms of it are at the very beginning. You've established all of the kind of, like, kooky quirks and all of the jokes and all of the fact that this isn't going to go the way you planned. But as the movie goes on and more of the plot reveals itself, it does sort of just become like a basic noir thriller. Like, everything you expect to be weird, everything you expect to be tropey is just kind of there. And so by the time you get to this midpoint where he's playing Russian roulette, Downey's kind of had that arc where, like, okay, you see where this incompetent dude has over time developed more competence, and then he just murders the suspect. And it's great. It's one of those things where it's like, you can't plan for it, you know? Like, it's not one of those things where it's like, I want to have all of the breadcrumbs pointing to this scene. But it's such a natural extension of what the movie was doing up to that point, and just boom, undercuts itself in the most perfect way. Like, it's such a precision-tuned script, and it's one of those things that I don't think you'd get away with if you didn't have Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer in these roles. And God, I miss Robert Downey Jr. doing shit like this. I miss shit like Chaplin and this and Tropic Thunder, where the dude is, like, legitimately acting and not just being a pompous jackass on screen.
See, like, you know, the funny thing about that whole Russian roulette scene is I love how, like, completely pointless it is. Like, if not for the fact that it is one of the funniest things in the world, you can, like, literally cut that from the script. Because how does that scene break down? All right, they're leaving, they've got a clue, they want to figure out, like, how to use this new information to take Harlan down. Okay. Oh no, Harlan's got a guy there, and he's got him at gunpoint, and they're going to go inside, and they're going to be interrogated or killed, or something terrible's going to happen to him. And then they turn the tables on him, and they accidentally kill him, and shit. And then, as they're dealing with, like, the fucking fallout from accidentally killing the guy, they get brought inside the fucking asylum and interrogated anyway. Like, it's such a, like, if not for the quality of the writing of the scene itself, if not for the hilarity of the scene itself, as a, like, script editor or just editor, you would say, yeah, cut this. This is pointless. but the fact that it is so fucking funny just makes it work so well. And like you can't imagine the movie without it, because like it's scenes like that create the tone and the feel of the entire film.
Well, it's also one of those scenes that like you take it out of context, and it's both like a perfect distillation of what the movie becomes over the course of watching it, and the perfect scene to like describe this movie to someone else. Like it's one of those things where all of the character and all of the quirks and all of like the essence of that movie is in that scene. Like it's almost like I can't imagine this kind of thing happening anywhere but a Shane Black movie. And it's such like a perfect statement on it that I just adore it. And it's just done so well. Like it's legitimately shot like an interrogation scene. The lighting is really nice. You have like this great setup banter between the two. You kind of get them going on the same page, and then they start bickering a little bit, and then Downey tries to have like that big intimidating like, I'm gonna yell at this dude and ask a question, and he doesn't even get the question out before the dude dies. It's just so good. It's legitimately one of those things where it's like, I don't know how you script this. I don't know what this looks like on the page. It's all just there.
It is really, really fucking good. I love shit like that, because like I don't know what it was about this era, because 2005 is when this comes out. You had Big Nothing, I think, is a couple years later. I think Big Nothing's like 2008 or 2009. And then Lucky Number 11 also came out around this time, like 2006, 2007. I'm sure there's another one that can fit into like that flow, but just fucking neo-noir had a goddamn takeoff in the mid to late 2000s, man. I don't know if it was this that's responsible for all those other movies getting made, but like Lucky Number 11 hits a similar vibe to this too. And just it plays with those same ideas of like the tropes and stuff, but it just like keeps building on them, you know?
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I think there's probably just like a cultural nostalgia that all kind of hit all at once, because you have a bunch of movies like this. You have Brubaker's Criminal taking off at the exact same time and winning all the Eisners in 2005. You just have like this onslaught of new mystery writers and mystery novelists coming out of the fucking woodwork. It's a good time, and it's a good time capsule in that way. And Alfie mentioned that this movie feels very 2005, and that's definitely the case, but I also feel like of all the movies that came out that year, all of the ones you just listed, like Big Nothing and Lucky Number 11, I think this is probably the most memorable. Like, this is the one I could easily
sure.
like show anyone anytime.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but like the other ones are, it's certainly of the era. But I don't know. I don't think anything about like. Okay, what about it to you guys feels so 2005? Because I don't. Maybe I'm just like still too attached to that era because I remember it so well.
There's something about the mid 2000s where everything looks like a CW TV show, where like we hadn't quite developed what's now called bisexual lighting, and so like we're just kind of sticking neon in random places, and we're shooting everything like it's a TV show. So there's like lots of close-ups and lots of like neon blues, and there's lots of like talking heads going back and forth at each other, or like two people in frame doing the walk and talk kind of like House at the time. There's just something about like the whole like aesthetic of 2005 movies that's in this that I can't like divorce from it. It literally looks like an episode of like the OC or some shit like that.
I don't necessarily agree. Well, I think that you're right on that, but that's not what stuck out for me. What stuck out to me, the main thing is obviously soundtrack, and the other thing that stuck out to me is like, you guys remember that like, you wouldn't steal a car, you wouldn't steal a TV, like that commercial, right?
Mm-hmm.
The color palette on that is the same as this film. and it's the same in every film of this era. Like again, it reminds you of like the fucking "and I need a hero to save me." Like, and it's the same like kind of, and it's at day, but it's like sunrise kind of at day when like all the daytime scenes are shot like that, and all the nighttime scenes are like shot it's like pitch black, but then the car, like highways, are like, I don't know. It's just, it looks like it's 2005, like in how it's shot.
There is also like that sort of weird perpetual, like it's either the sun is setting or it's the middle of the night on almost every scene.
Exactly. And then like the contrast is like turned all the way up. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I kind of prefer how that looks to how a lot of movies these days look, because at least there's some fucking like contrast to it. But like it looks of its time like that. And I think the main thing as well, and just in terms of like how the dialogue's done and how characters kind of interact with each other, like that kind of has that. I don't even know if it's the vibe, but it is definitely among that, like, we're using. There's a lot of casualness to it, which you just don't get these days. And I think the biggest example with that is if Val Kilmer's character, you could not do Val Kilmer's character today. Okay, that character would be completely different by the nature of being gay. Like the jokes they tell with him and how they play it and all that kind of thing, where it's they just don't make a deal about it. It's just he is, and there's jokes specific to that, but it's not like he's not like very effeminate or anything. That would either be too subtle or it wouldn't be enough, or kind of thing. Like people on both sides of it would have an issue with it today, I feel.
I mean, sure, but that's just fucking because 2021 audiences are ridiculous.
Right, but that's what I mean. Like it's just interesting to look back on that. To where it kind of gives me like you were been going through who here. It gives me like Captain Jack vibes of just where he's here and this is just this.
Well, I guess today, like Val Kilmer, the fact that Val Kilmer would be in it would be a point of contention because Val Kilmer's not gay.
Yeah, I don't know. I still don't know where people land on the non-gay. Like it's acting. You know, the characters that kiss in movies, they don't always actually love each other.
I mean, I agree with you, but you know that's going to be a thing, right? Like
I think there's an argument for it. Like I hear the argument for it more for like the trans side of like the audiences. That one makes sense to me, but like when it comes to the sexual orientation stuff, I'm like, it seems like you're a little. I don't know. I question that one sometimes. So I don't know. That's a good question. Like you don't know. Maybe Val Kilmer's bi or some shit.
Well, and also to Alfie's point, I think this definitely has like that mid 2000s gay jokes to it, but the gayness is not the butt of the joke at any point, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Which is probably not the same for most movies that came out that year. I mean, I don't remember what else came out that year, but I imagine there was definitely a lot more
Batman Begins' portrayal of the gay community was so offensive.
Honestly, though, I can't fucking believe that Roz and Bruce never made out. Fucking triggered. Saved his fucking life, and you can't even kiss him. Jesus Christ.
Someday, I'm like deathly curious what the fuck the audience is for this show. Because like sometimes we'll say shit like that, and I'll get like a comment from someone, and they'll be like, "Yeah, fuck this thing." I'm like, "Oh, okay. So you listened very particularly for us to like slide into our right wing phase, and then when we talk about the left wing shit, now suddenly there's a problem."
While we're talking about Val Kilmer, that dude is really fucking funny, and I don't know what his career is outside of like fucking Batman and this movie, but I hope he's done a bunch of comedies because he's got such good comic timing. It's unbelievable.
Val Kilmer's more of like a dramatic guy. Besides Batman Forever, the biggest movie he's known for is when he played Jim Morrison in The Doors. By Oliver Stone,
that's true.
Directed.
Well, he also played the Saint in the '90s remake of that movie. That was more dramatic.
Yeah, he was also in the remake for what is argued to be the worst film ever, the Island of Dr. Moreau remake.
I've never seen that.
Which, dude, neither have I, but like I've heard so many fucking stories. Like, okay, so apparently, like the original writer, or maybe it's director, whatever, of the film, like was under way too much pressure, and like he was way too attached to the project, and just he couldn't get it to be like perfect to his vision at the time, and he got way overwhelmed and had a nervous breakdown on set, and so the studio pulled him from the project. But he didn't leave the island they were shooting on. He just kind of like went into the woods and lived there and like snuck back on set periodically throughout the rest of the production of the film.
The fuck?
I know, right?
So fucking extra.
Yeah, someone made a fucking whole documentary about the making of that movie, because like that's just one thing that happened on the making of that film. Because like I think, if I remember correctly, I think Val Kilmer at the time was going through like a really messy divorce, but he insisted that he could do the movie anyway, and so it just like kills his performance the whole time. Like, it's everything I hear about that fucking movie is just a nightmare.
There's a lot of that going around with that dude's career, because I remember when The Snowman was coming out, and he's in that movie with Michael Fassbender, and they had to redub all of his dialogue because at the time he was going through treatment for throat cancer, so they had to shoot all of his scenes in a really particular way not to show like his enlarged throat, and then he couldn't like deliver dialogue because his tongue was swelled up, so they had to redub over all of his dialogue, and you basically only know Val Kilmer's in that movie for like the 2 or 3 shots where he walks into frame.
Jesus. That's fucking
Why
weird,
even
man.
like
That guy's
take
got
the
like
movie if you can't speak? That seems so unnecessary.
Fucking contracts are weird, man. Like, especially because Val Kilmer's like kind of fallen off, but like, again, he played Batman. That's like a major A-list Hollywood role when you think about it, right? He was really up and coming in the 90s and was like a big name for a while. And then just since Batman Forever was a bit of like a disappointment and stuff, his career kind of fell off, but he's still got like the name recognition, so he has like, I'd argue probably like pretty strong negotiating power when it comes to contracts and shit.
It's really funny about that.
I don't know, it's interesting
like,
how that works.
Like, at the time, Batman Forever was a massive success, like both critically and financially. Like,
Yeah.
Batman Forever was a critical
yeah,
success?
it was. People thought it was back to formula after the disappointment of Batman Returns.
I've never heard much about the release of that one. I know, like, the fact he didn't come back
So
for Batman and Robin always seemed odd
was
for
like a contract disputes because he wanted more money. And so that's why they went with George Clooney, because George Clooney was literally just off
ER,
so he was cheap. Which is really funny to say that, like, George Clooney was cheaper than Val Kilmer. But that's what happened.
Yeah.
It's like, he kind of... It was nothing to do with like him being received bad or anything like that. He just kind of wanted more from the Batman deal than he got, especially because I think how much money that movie made, which I think is rightly so, and Michael Keaton got...
I mean, Nicholson's still fucking living off that
Exactly,
movie, so
right.
yeah.
So, and then from there it kind of snowballed, right? But like he was pretty perfectly set up from that, which is interesting.
Well, I mean, he didn't
Yeah, I
really
mean, like,
need
because
Batman.
Doors is 94, if I remember correctly, and that's like a huge success. That's still like, for my money, one of the best biopics that's ever come out. And so yeah, he kind of goes off that, and then you get 3 years later with Batman Forever and stuff, and then ever since then his career's been a lot of weird ups and downs.
Well, I mean, he didn't even
This is
really
one of
need
the ups.
Batman because that dude was in Top Gun, which was one of the biggest movies of the entire 80s. He went from Top Gun to The Doors to Tombstone before Batman even happened.
Yeah, no, he was really on the rise for a long while there, and I imagine he probably only takes scripts when he wants to at this point. I imagine if, assuming he was smart with his money or whatever, he probably does pretty well on things to the point where he doesn't even need to act anymore unless he wants to.
Just because you mentioned that point, I'm looking at his Wikipedia filmography now. That dude has made anywhere from 2 to 4 movies every year since 2000.
Jesus.
Yeah, like, it's insane how many movies he's made. I've
not seen him in a lot of stuff, though.
A lot of this is direct to
I really
video.
feel like he's fallen off. Oh, wow, so maybe he does need it. I don't know.
Literally, this 2020 so far is the only year I've seen where he's only got 1 movie coming out. 2013, he did 5. Jesus Christ, how the fuck do you do 5 movies?
Wow.
Yeah, no, he's prolific, but maybe not in the right ways. Like, who the fuck has seen Hardwired from 2009?
Yeah, no, I've never even
Or
heard
the
of this.
2010
Like, I really thought...
classic Gun.
Man, shit. I really thought Val Kilmer had just, like, fallen off for, like, personal reasons, and find out that he's doing a bunch of, like, fucking B movies or whatever. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. He played fucking Mark Twain.
Huh.
Mark Twain twice! What the fuck?
So I guess this was when Robert Downey Jr. was coming back up and when Val Kilmer was going down.
Well, this was 2014 and 2019. He fucking played Mark Twain 2 years ago, and I didn't see this. What the hell?
Mark Twain cinematic universe by Val
Seriously.
Kilmer that everyone has just ignored, but it's clearly fucking like when we watch it and we're like, oh my god, this is how these franchises should be built. Genius, I can't believe this. It blows my mind.
To get off the portion of the show where we just talk about Wikipedia articles, the other thing about this movie that I genuinely really like is that Shane Black always sets all of his movies during Christmas, and there's sort of like a normal distribution as far as that goes, because you go all the way back to Lethal Weapon, and it doesn't really matter. But then over time, up to like Last Action Hero, and then peaking with Iron Man 3 and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, the Christmas thing becomes like really, really important and central to the movie. And then after that, it just peaks back down. We're like, I don't know why the fuck it's set during Christmas for the nice guys. It's like it's only there because he always sets movies at Christmas. But there's been a lot of...
It's funny that he didn't for Predator.
Yes, but Predator had a ton of production issues, so I am sure there's a cutscene where it establishes it's Christmas.
Actually, no, it's a important plot point that it's on Halloween.
Is it really? Okay, interesting. I haven't actually seen Predator because I heard of all the trouble with it and how he's unhappy with it, so I'm like, okay, this probably doesn't need to be watched. But anyway.
Nah, it's a good. I like it. The Predators fan base hates it, but I like
guess
it.
That's what
it's a good movie.
But anyway, so Shane Black's talked a lot about this, where like people are like, why the fuck do you set all your movies during Christmas? And I'm sure that the later choices to make it deliberately Christmas is because he gets asked the question all the time and he's not actually thinking about it anymore. But his go-to answer used to be that he sets all his movies during Christmas because A, the red and green and the Christmas lights and the snow is just a good aesthetic. Where like no matter what scene you shoot, if you throw in those colors, it's going to look good and it's going to look different from everything else coming out that year. Because we don't actually set a lot of movies with Christmas aesthetics that aren't deliberately Christmas movies that come out in December. So it just stands out. But then the other thing is, he thinks that melodrama can be played up way more intensely during the holidays. So people who are depressed are way more depressed during Christmas. People who are frustrated are way more frustrated during Christmas. You can buy overzealous reactions and over-the-top performances more during Christmas than you can anywhere else. So with those two, I feel like with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and with Iron Man 3, he does a really good job of kind of deliberately playing up those two separate elements, where the kind of insanity of this plot and how over the top everyone is, I feel like really gels with what he's saying about how people being like that during Christmas. The fact that the entire impetus for this plot is Robert Downey Jr. trying to steal a toy for his kid to give to them on Christmas, I like that choice a lot, but then you contrast that with Iron Man 3, and part of why that movie works so well even after all these years is that it doesn't look like any other Marvel movie. The actual like snow scenes and the Christmas lights and stuff, like that gives it a whole different feel. So I like that a lot, and if there's one thing the Nice Guys does better, or sorry, the one thing Nice Guys does worse than Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is that Christmas doesn't matter in that movie.
I really wish that that Harmony kept the fucking Santa Girl outfit on for the rest of the movie.
That was so fucking good.
That just... It's just, like, yeah, she looks really good in it and shit, but, like, it just adds to the ridiculousness of everything that's going on, and I don't know, there's... I do think, for all the good this movie does, I do think that section of the film where, like, you get the car chase scene with, like, the shooting and everything, and then they just kind of go back to the hotel and everything's hunky-dory for a little bit, and then they get like the last major revelation. I understand that you need it because you need that really good scene with Robert Downey Jr. and Harmony, revealing like the girl he's chased after, and she slept with his best friend from high school, and he can't forgive that. That's the final straw for him. Like that's a really good scene, and so it would be a little awkward to have to cut it completely, but just. It does feel like they pump the brakes a little too hard and too much stuff resets in that time frame to the point and like you lose the outfit and everything. I just feel like that's like the all the climax and everything else that's going on in that scene. God, they should have kept that fucking outfit on her. It's just so perfectly like getting to the vibe of everything that's happening. And the fucking walking through this fucking weird ass sex club at Christmas with that fucking reindeer bitch and the candy cane people and shit. It's weird.
That's the other thing about that I really like is that there's just so many like memorable locations in this movie where like all of the action, it doesn't just happen in like at a party or at a club. It's like a really specific Hollywood party. It's a really specific fucking sex club during Christmas. Everything about it just feels like distinct. Where all of the sets have personalities and everyone's playing off each other really well. There's something about like almost like a Tarantino quality where it's like all of these actors and all of these people are talented on their own, but when they're together under Shane Black, they're just doing something else and it works 110%.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not to throw more MCU shade, but I'll throw more MCU shade. Robert Downey Jr.'s best Iron Man performance in the entire series is Iron Man 3. Because Shane Black directed it. Dude knows how to direct Robert Downey Jr.
I'm just going to clarify for the audience and everyone listening that we were all immediately thinking this as you said that. When have you ever resisted the chance to throw MCU shade?
You know, before Endgame.
Back before Endgame, yes. Like, go listen to the Geeky Gentleman episodes before Endgame when Steve said shit like, Civil War is a perfect masterpiece of a tragedy film.
Look, Steve went through a time skip, like, 3-year character arc. But now he comes back with a new character design, he's taller, he's like got a new jutsu, and he's also like, my previous bonds mean nothing to me, Kevin. I've sacrificed them all in the name of cinema.
No, you know what we fucking need? Someone needs to take the painstaking effort to like put Steve's head over Thanos and Kevin Feige's head over fucking Gamora and to just do that scene.
What did it cost? Everything.
I like a little Gamora
like, it's
is
just
just
so
like
funny.
young Steve with like a Superman jacket.
Oh yes. Also more shade. Robert Downey Jr. as Sherlock Holmes is way better than Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. Those movies fucking rule.
No, those movies are fucking dumb.
No, fuck you. Those are like the best superhero movies of that era. Those are so fucking good.
They're really not.
Game of Shadows is so good. I adore that movie.
Game of Shadows is good. No one remembers anything about the first film.
I do. I
no one
love
could
that
tell
movie.
me a single detail
fucking Mark
about
Strong
the first film.
playing this fucking cult leader bullshit and trying to blow up Parliament. It's so fucking good.
Steve, stop embarrassing yourself and making up fake plots for a movie that no one remembers, okay?
I'm making up a plot for an amazing movie that Guy Ritchie should direct called Sherlock Holmes.
God,
movie fucking
Steve,
rules.
this is just sad, Steve. This is
Iron
just
Man
sad.
3 is the best Iron Man movie, and she's much better at Sherlock Holmes. Also, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is great. Back to this.
Yes. Robert Downey Jr.
And now,
again.
back to our regularly scheduled programming.
You can't avoid that conversation when you're talking about him as an actor. And the thing that threw me off about this was seeing him so clean shaven.
Well, yeah, there's just something about like him playing completely in over his head, constantly being berated by other people, having like a distinct lack of confidence, and like there's a sincere, endearing quality to him in here that he just hasn't had in most of the movies I've seen since this. Even the ones he was doing at the time Iron Man got big, like fucking Due Date, even when he's in those movies where he's supposed to be playing a character that's having a shit time, he plays it like he's the only person in the room that is not aware of the script. But you look at something like this, and like he's clearly in over his head and he's frustrated, but you kind of sympathize with him, and he feels like so much more of an everyman than he ever has in his life.
You know what? Really
Well,
great
like-
idea.
The funny thing to me is the scene that sticks out the most is he kind of falls into that Tony Stark intimidating mode for one scene, and it's the one right before he gets the shit beaten out of him at the party. Like, just the way he like threatens that guy and, you know, tries to intimidate him out of like the situation. He doesn't want to actually fight him, you can tell, but like he's trying to intimidate him and like build himself up to sound like a badass to stand up for this random girl, as far as he's concerned. And like it's just that the way he plays that, you kind of see some of those fucking Iron Man moments, like for example Iron Man 3, where he's like fucking gives his address on the news cameras and shit, you know, like it's got that vibe to it, so it's kind of interesting to see it come out at certain points.
Oh yeah, because you parallel those scenes where like he's at the party and trying to threaten the dude, then gets the shit kicked out of him with that jump cut, or like the scene where he feels like he has more confidence and he's got the gun in his hand and he does Russian roulette and kills the dude. Like there are clearly moments where this person wants to feel bigger than his britches, but that is not his role and he can't do it, and the movie punishes him every time he tries.
What I think like Robert Downey Jr. had in this, and I think like Iron Man changed like the trajectory of his career, is even more so than like Ryan Reynolds, who kind of has it as well, is they're not leading men, but they're leads. And if that makes sense, like it's that kind of like they'll play the roles of the guy who is in over his head main character. Not the action star, not the big coming hero, but it's the everyday Joe. It's like they have a distinct look to them. They're charismatic, but they're not so charismatic. They're not so like chiseled or anything. Robert Downey Jr. even more so like that. Especially he doesn't look young in this. He still kind of looks how he does right now. He's got one of those faces that is like permanently 45 even when he wasn't 45. So like it's just that kind of look to him. And what I think is interesting about that is if Iron Man didn't happen, I think that's what the rest of his career would have been. It would have been like very dramatic roles, and then a lot of roles like this in like comedy, or kind of like just the guy who's very quick and witty but not necessarily competent. And then Iron Man happens and we introduce the Tony Stark archetype, and then that leads to Sherlock Holmes, and then it leads to the rest of Robert Downey Jr.'s career, which is basically consists of those two. But like, I think like it's so interesting to see like that in a pre-Iron Man world of what could have been different if he didn't get cast as Iron Man. I think his rest of his career would have looked a lot closer to this, which I think is what kind of happened with Ryan Reynolds when Green Lantern didn't exactly take off. And Deadpool is a very different thing because his face isn't even in that the entire. And even then, Deadpool is very much this character, but if they were a superhero, where they're kind of just fucking around the whole time. They give me a similar vibe like that. That was something interesting to see, which I hadn't imagined from Robert Downey Jr. It's kind of like a what-if scenario.
Yeah, he has an interesting career because, I mean, obviously everyone knows at this point about, like, his jail time and the drug issues and all of that stuff. And there's sort of this painted picture of him kind of, like, being in prison and losing his career for that, and then coming back as Iron Man as, like, his big sort of award-winning return to fame. But that's a weird metaphor for him because it wasn't like he was some sort of shining star that burned out and then came back. He was always kind of just clawing his way up through doing kind of artsy lower movies. He did really well with Chaplin, and that took off for a little bit, but then he did like nothing of substance for a few years. Like his biggest movie between that and the 2000s is like Natural Born Killers, and who the fuck remembers him in that movie? And like he's in a fucking Disney movies and stuff. Like this dude had a very storied career because he went all the way from doing bigger blockbuster movies pre-superheroes, doing like Oscar bait movies, and then doing like quirky weird shit like this. And he had so much more range in those movies. And then Iron Man wasn't so much of like we've taken this person and we've now like returned him to stardom. It was more just like we shot him all the way up. He was never in his life as big as he is in Iron Man, and he's only gone up since then. And the movies he did in between Iron Man taking off and those early years, like he did Due Date, he did Tropic Thunder, and he did some other like romantic comedies and stuff like that. And those movies are a lot more similar to this kind of stuff than anything he does after this. He almost has George Lucas effect to a degree where like after Iron Man, he's basically only doing Iron Man. He's got cameos and other things. He did The Judge. He has that Dr. Dolittle movie that came out recently. But like at this point, no one really sees him as anyone but Iron Man.
You think he's been typecast since Iron Man?
I don't think he's been typecast. I think he's gone out of his way to play Iron Man and everything. I think it's like a comparison to Ryan Reynolds. I fucking can't stand Ryan Reynolds. I hate Ryan Reynolds so much. My biggest problem with Ryan Reynolds is that I have never seen that dude in a movie post him playing Deadpool where he is just not playing Deadpool. And he's winking at the camera and acts like he's never in the scene because he's just playing Deadpool in every goddamn movie. Free Guy is just a Deadpool movie. He's getting to that absurd degree. And Robert Downey Jr. is similar, where I think after Iron Man, he does roles where he's not playing Iron Man, but he plays it like Iron Man. Like, The Judge is not a great movie. It's interesting, and it's got a little bit more heart than any of the stuff he's done since. But he is effectively playing Iron Man. He's playing a rich dude who's come back and is really successful and is arrogant and wants to show off for his dad how great and rich and successful he's become. And he's snarky and he says all the right things and he never gets belittled by anyone. And when they do belittle him, he shows off and always comes out triumphant at the end. Doolittle's probably the thing where he's like strayed from that path the most. But the dude just became Iron Man and never stopped being Iron Man. Versus pre that,
I mean, it's interesting to look at like it's interesting to look at what he's done since Iron Man that isn't MCU. So you got like Tropic Thunder, The Soloist, Love and Distrust, and that's not even like a movie, that's just a video. Due Date, Chef, The Judge, The Nice Guys, Doolittle, and then 3 things that are all pre-production. So it's just like he does remarkably little outside of the MCU.
Yeah, he's George Lucas again. Because he's not even in The Chef or Nice Guys. Those are just cameos. Like, he does a voiceover in The Nice Guys.
Oh, wow.
And in The Chef, he just like literally shows up because that's a movie about Jon Favreau making Iron Man from the metaphor of a dude being a chef.
Okay.
Like the only
Soloist is like an actual,
yeah, so like the only actual movies he's done where he's playing a role are Tropic Thunder, The Soloist, Due Date, and The Judge. But Due Date and The Judge, he's just Iron Man without the armor. And I've never seen The Soloist, and Tropic Thunder's the only one where he's doing something legitimately different.
Fucking Gen Z found out about Tropic Thunder and tried to cancel Robert Downey Jr.
To be fair, that was pretty controversial even at the time.
It's one of those things where, like, they fucking knew what they were doing. Like, that's the joke, is that it's, like, way too far. Like, I don't know, like, how to explain it. Like, yes, it is offensive. That's the joke. Like, it's supposed to, like, wow, I can't believe that an actor's doing this. This is pretty fucking offensive, right, guys? Yes, it would be. That's what makes it funny. I don't know what to tell. Like, what are they gonna do? If I can actually cast a black guy to play a white guy who's gotten to surgery to look like a black guy, that may have actually been funnier. I don't know.
That would have been so good. If you needed to get like a really distinct black actor, like you needed Sam Jackson for that or something.
Ian just made the joke funnier by accident.
Could you fucking imagine like fucking Lawrence Fishburne playing a white dude to get surgery to look like a black dude? It's so funny.
There you go.
Alright. You know what? Fuck it. Okay, we can cancel Robert Downey Jr. now because someone should have suggested that. That took me, like, what, 20 seconds?
It took you 20 seconds. That took you the time to recite the joke.
It's so good.
Oh, goddamn, that's funny.
I was like, what are you going to do? This brilliant thing? Yes, exactly that. Oh, okay. Okay. All right, dude. Just because I did this the other day, like, it was a couple weeks ago at work, where I proposed a thing and instantly came up with the right answer just as an example. But I want to... This has nothing to do with the fucking movie. This is just a shit posting at this point. But, all right. Name a crossover that would be hilariously inappropriate and tone deaf. The most tone deaf, inappropriate crossover you can do. You can say whatever you want to say, and I'm going to give you my example that is just the correct answer.
Do you want us to go first, or do you want to give us your answer?
Yeah, no, I want you to go first. So I want to see you fail.
Okay. Legally Blonde and Just Mercy.
I don't know the fuck Just
It's that
Mercy
movie
is.
that's based on a book about a black lawyer trying to solve racism or some shit. I don't know. I didn't see the movie. It's got Michael B. Jordan.
Okay, all right. Alfie,
Nope. No clown.
you got nothing. You have no tone deaf crossovers. It's just me.
Dragon Ball
All right,
Z
all right.
and the DC universe.
That's pretty bad.
Oh,
That's really
Shots
rough,
fired.
man.
That's like barely watchable.
yeah. I mean, fucking like Goku would just walk everybody. Like, what the fuck? Okay. All right. So you ready for the right answer? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles meet Anne Frank.
Oof.
I guarantee you someone's already written that fanfiction.
That one hits. Ooh, okay.
All right. Here you go. You ready for my dialogue treatment? Alfie loves my dialogue treatments. So here's my dialogue treatment. Come on, Anne. You're gonna fight the Nazis with us. But I am just a little Jew. I do not know anything about fighting. Anne, your people invented martial arts. Why do you think they call it jujitsu?
Raphael,
anyway,
this is where my
these
parents were
teams have
gassed by
decided
Hitler.
to-
Cow, a bummer.
Okay, I was gonna say these two actually just me have decided to leave Geeky Gentlemen. You two have clearly gone insane in the interim, where I was not here. I do not associate with them. I am not associated with the channel in any way, shape, or form.
Jujitsu is the fucking
Stop
funniest thing
saying
I've
it.
ever written in my life.
Stop saying it, please.
No, it's too good.
This is worse than the N-bomb.
It's great because the 2005.
We just had someone leave our Discord server because they said we were anti-Semitic. This is not the episode to put out.
I'm sticking to my guns on this. This would be hilarious.
Not gonna lie, I feel like the Diary of Anne Frank would be a much more approachable text if there were giant mutant ninja turtles. It'd be a lot less heavy, you know? It would be a little bit lighter to get through.
No, you know the Leonardo chapters would somehow be more heavy.
Oh, absolutely. I want Michelangelo in a concentration camp. What is that vibe?
Sneaks in a pizza.
I want to see people get gassed in the chambers, and he's just like, cow, a bummer.
Oh no!
You two are on something tonight. I don't know what's in the water.
See, Steve took it to like another
really
level,
did.
man. I just thought fucking jujitsu was hilarious as a pun. Fucking Steve over here. Like, see, this is why you'll never be on that Toriyama level. You have no brain for puns.
So anyway, the really other thing...
You run from them like a coward.
So the other thing about the nice guys, or not nice guys, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, that I really like, is that the narrations are divided into chapters that Robert Downey Jr. like talks us through, and all of the chapters are the titles of Raymond Chandler books. So that's pretty dope. But But yeah, it's fun. It's one of those movies where it's just got so much hints and layers of different noirs and stuff. The basic plot is taken from like a 50s book to it. They've got all the Raymond Chandler titles to it. There's a few moments that are like directly lifted from Chinatown. It's just one of those things where it's like, if you go back through this, you can kind of like pick apart every scene and be like, oh yeah, that's where he read that book and that's where he was influenced by this thing. Basically what all of his movies before this are like, except they're less in your face about it, I think, because like no one else is gonna like listen to Robert Downey Jr. narrate a scene and be like, that's a Raymond Chandler scene or a Raymond Chandler book. But yeah, it's a good movie. I really like it.
I enjoyed watching this one. I think I will check out more Shane Black films as a result of this.
Bro, when you come visit, I need to show you The Nice Guys. Because The Nice Guys, if you like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and I like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, it's a good movie, but I would never show anyone Kiss Kiss Bang Bang when I can show them The Nice Guys.
Well, I'll watch that with you then, and you're not allowed to touch the remote control for the entire duration of the movie.
I will attempt not to. It's so good.
There will be no attempt, Steve. I will not hit you. One more thing while we're on my little tangent about references and stuff. So Chinatown is really, really famous. It's widely considered one of the greatest movies of all time and one of the greatest noirs of all time, yada, yada, yada. One of the big things Chinatown does that's important is that Jack Nicholson at the beginning of the scene gets a knife stuck up his nose and then gets like a big cut across it. And so for like 80% of the movie, he's wearing this big bandage on his nose. And so there's like this motif going through the movie where like every time he's attempting to get closer and closer to the mystery, he keeps getting injured in some way, and so he's kind of like permanently in a weak state. And by the end of it, when he finally takes the bandage off, is when he sees the whole picture, but he's completely powerless to do anything because the injury is still in his face. And so like the bandage becomes like this really important symbol all the way through, and it becomes really important to the point where like so many of the shots, sometimes the only thing that's visible is like the really bright white of the bandage. And so in this movie, Robert Downey Jr.'s got like a similar moment where he gets his fucking finger cut off, and it just becomes this recurring thing where he just keeps getting like, he tries to be competent, someone slaps him down, and like his finger gets attached and reattached like 2 separate times. And there's this is great moment like at one point where they're talking about a sentence and someone corrects him, and then he repeats the explanation to Val Kilmer, and Val Kilmer shits on it and tells him the opposite. And it's kind of great because both of those moments are when he's got his finger cut off. So it's like on the one hand, he's got an arrow in the leg because he's wrong, then he says what he was told when he was corrected, and he's still wrong. And I love it. It's really funny. It's just really good. Like, it's a good way to structure that gag to play on multiple levels because it's funny every goddamn time.
Just like the idea of fucking like casually discussing grammar, you know?
As one does.
Like, who the fuck does that?
Don't you? Aren't you sometimes just like?
No.
Don't you just like randomly talk to someone and be like, so you know, it's actually eat your cake and have it too, not have your cake and eat it too, because it wouldn't make sense the other way. Is that not just a normal topic of conversation for you?
No, can't say it is. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for this episode. Let's see here. What are we going to do for ratings? Steve, you go first. I got to know where you're landing.
I will give this 4 out of 5 sexy Santa costumes. I really like it. There's a couple of things here and there where I would not dock points if I had not seen The Nice Guys.
God, I gotta check out The Nice Guys, I guess.
Just so fucking good, man. So fucking good.
You go, shall I go?
Alfie.
Do I talk first? Or you go first?
Alfie, you go.
Alright, I'll, for me, for this one again, never seen this film before. Really did enjoy it. Was a good time. Was a good movie watch, and genuinely made me laugh out loud, which I think is rare for even good comedies, just to get like a hearty laugh, especially from scenes like the scene with the piss, or like the roulette. So yeah, this was a good time. I'll give this 4 out of 5 pissed on corpses.
Nice, nice. Fucking Alfie sitting here talking about us getting canceled. He's the one fucking peeing on corpses and shit.
Yeah. Sometimes you gotta mark your territory,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. I really do legitimately love this movie. So I'm gonna give it 5 out of 5. Fucking weird naked reindeer lady that I only assume helped inspire an entire generation of furries. Because that's just like the image with her that is like burned into my mind and will not leave is the fucking fact that she somehow has hooves. That's the part that I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Yeah. So that works. Next week we should get the return of that Matt kid, whatever his name is. No one can actually remember. And he will be joining us for Holiday Month. He picked the Muppets Christmas Carol film, so we'll check that out. We'll review that. I have a sneaking suspicion it's going to be one of those films that we either go like way too hard on or we run out of stuff to talk about within like 20 minutes. But we'll see what happens. Until then, everyone, I'm the Philosopher.
I am the Champion of the Oppressed.
And I am about to learn some jujitsu.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.
Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas!